Hey yo, things are gonna get rolling on my count, so get ready to open those curtains in 3, 2, 1. Okay, hello, we are just here talking about what we watched here last week on What We Watched Last Week. It is what it sounds like. We are just talking about the great things we had on last week. The movies, the TVs, retrospectives, specials, whatever really floats our proverbial boats here. This is a show about spreading a little love for the things we love, and, you know, I do love stories. So please don't think this is intended to be any sort of in-depth criticism or review of anything we are discussing. Even if there are criticisms in there, everything is meant to be in good faith, really. I'm not here to be a bully. I just want to talk about, you know, what we watched the third week of June. 2014's Son of Batman. No one talks about that time Bruce Thomas played Batman. Well, now he's Commissioner Gordon. Do you think that's an upgrade or a downgrade? This movie isn't about Gordon, though. It's Damian Wayne's movie, the titular Son of Batman, learning that the cult-like army he's been groomed to lead is not necessarily the only inheritance if he chooses it. Either way, Deathstroke is mulling around in the background to deal with. Pulling from a few different comic sources to make something lesser than the sum of its parts, although I don't think it's the material so much as the execution. The worst thing a Batman movie can be is boring, and this feels like a Batman movie going through the motions. I like that it doesn't hold the audience's hand. It assumes you know the Batman mythos, that you already know who the League of Assassins and Talia al Ghul are, but outside of Stuart Allen's Damian Wayne and a little bit of Sean Mayer's Dick Grayson, every other character is really devoid of range here. I really like Jason O'Mara's Batman in the previous Justice League appearance, but he and especially Thomas Gibson's Deathstroke feel unbelievably tired. It also feels like we lost scope of how many characters we can believably animate on screen at a time with the budget we have, and I hope that isn't a trend that continues. 2024's Under Paris. So this is the big shark movie of the year that everyone's hailing as the next Jaws? I mean, really at its core, the movie's A-plot is Deep Blue Sea, trying to keep a giant freak of nature mako shark from escaping into the open ocean. Or is it being compared to Jaws because it's lifting the B-plot entirely from that franchise, disregarding the police and ocean experts to keep a highly publicized triathlon going and the water full of people soup? There are really well-designed sequences of suspense incorporated throughout, but just as many chompathons where we see how many people a shark can shoot in a barrel that feel, you know, underwhelmingly cartoonish. It makes for an uneven but fun big shark movie. Under Paris does take itself seriously, but not so seriously that we aren't making up new species of super shark to create a situation in which we actually have a giant shark living under Paris. The biggest leap in logic that this movie is asking you to make is there being a freshwater breathing hyper-aggressive giant mako shark that is born pregnant. If you can get on board with that, you can get on board with the rest of the movie. It's done pretty well. Game Changer Season 6. Now this is not the first time we've talked about Dropout here on this channel. They are a great streaming service doing fun improv game shows with a revolving cast. Game Changer being one of those shows that really helped the channel take off along with Dimension 20. The core of Game Changer is that the game changes every episode, so not only do the contestants have to win, but they have to figure out what this week's game is in the first place. Whether it be Impressions, Simon Says, Bingoception, or, you know, Legally Distinct Survivor. Always hosted by Dropout owner Sam Reich. The series is just as much about torturing the contestants and the guests on the show as it is about just having fun. This is the best example of a bunch of friends turning having fun into a career since Jackass, maybe. All of the seasons have been fun and uplifting, but Season 6 had some particularly standout moments. Sam Says 3 might be the highlight of the season for me. It's so beautifully cruel and fun at the same time. 2021's The Kingsman. Okay, please don't think that just because all the villains are based on real people that they were all really in some sort of conspiratorial cabal. I don't think that's the message we were trying to send here, but God, people are stupid. In The Kingsman, we follow a soldier turned medic turned spy turned assassin trying to keep his son out of the First World War by trying to stop it from behind the scenes in the first place. Fighting through every notable figure you can name from the conflict along the way in some fantastic dances including fists, knives, guns, sword, and a whole lot of, you know, improvised weaponry. I didn't realize a motion picture could embody tonal whiplash so perfectly. Jumping between meditative discussions on the morality of war, right and wrong, with Rasputin sucking the taint of Chef Slowik in the span of about 5 minutes. Where the juxtaposition may have worked with the previous two Kingsman movies, it makes the messaging feel really disingenuous here at best. It feels less like a dark comedy and more like we don't care what we're saying. 1996, Dragon Ball, The Path to Power. Completely 100% good-natured boyo, Son Goku is minding his own fucking business when he is attacked by a horny teenager, Bulma, who can't get a boyfriend and wants to steal the boy's property. Taking advantage of Goku's good nature, Bulma uses him as a bodyguard as the pair jump from adventure and new companion to adventure and new companion, hunting down the MacGuffin balls faster than the army of color-coded muscle goons working for a short little ginger. The Path to Power might actually be the perfect amalgamation of multiple arcs crammed into one. This is certainly my favorite retelling of that original adventure Goku went on, especially because it includes so much of my favorite Dragon Ball saga, that being the Red Ribbon Army saga. The feature was animated from the ground up to be as crisp and show how much production value a Dragon Ball movie could have. That crisp new animation is the weirdest thing to get used to as well, since Goku is definitely not on model to the original Dragon Ball, avoiding the round character designs for the thinner, streamlined models that were being used during Dragon Ball GT. Unless you are the most devout of purists, though, this is one of the best ways to experience any Dragon Ball story, especially if you want to capture the magic of early franchise Dragon Ball. 2023's Ahsoka on Disney+. Hands up if you thought the character who enthusiastically called someone Sky Guy would end up getting their own series. No hands? I definitely didn't think that was going to happen. Titular Ahsoka's journey in this series' first season is all about hunting down a MacGuffin so we can hunt down some kid she knew years ago so she can hunt down the super genius Nazi Smurf that he disappeared with, while some witches and a couple of legally distinct Sith are mucking around throughout. I do have a soft spot for legacy characters like Ahsoka. It has been great to see her journey into a title character, well deserving of the role. It does feel like 4 episodes worth of story has been stretched over the course of 8, but the time that could have been cut is beautifully shot. Whether it is set pieces or action sequences of exposition just could have been condensed, along with a few back and forth exchanges between the MacGuffin or prisoners that feel a little more like padding. Or maybe I just want more Thrawn. And Thrawn earlier. Thrawn's great. 1995's Cruel Jaws. Jaws 5. Cruel Jaws is certainly part of the Jaws canon. Absolutely. Without question. Cruel Jaws follows an insufferable nerd and a small-town cop living in a small island town at just the time for a really, really big shark to kill and terrorize the townsfolk, with a mafia plot dancing around in the background that was just lifted from the original Jaws novel for good measure. I don't really know what to say about Cruel Jaws without being mean, except it is lesser in every way imaginable. The actors are trying, but can't help but fumble through line after line, while the movie itself even resorts to using footage from the original Jaws movies. Not that that's not a thing Jaws hasn't, already done itself in its own movies. They made a movie, got it edited, and put a score to it. Wait, is that the Star Wars theme? Listen, if they got this movie made and released, you can do anything you put your mind to. Justice League, Throne of Atlantis from 2015. I see, we didn't think an Aquaman movie would do good on its own, so we made his origin a Justice League movie story, eh? Well, when the titular Throne of Atlantis is put into the position to be reacquired, the bastard son of the Queen is brought to the forefront to claim the throne and stop the war between Atlantis and the entire surface world, while the Justice League provides support in the background and solves a few mysteries before the big Atlantis reveal is made, but, Atlantis is in the title, we know that mystery was coming, right? Again, the studio does show its weaknesses when animating these larger crowds, and when we are threatening a global conflict, you get a lot of large crowds you have to animate. Whenever things are blocked around our heroes, everything becomes more fluid and consistent. And speaking of our heroes, their characterizations are a little more on point this time around, with a few even being recast for the series' benefit. This is an Aquaman story, though, with the Justice League just kinda slotted in, evident by the fact that most of this shares a plot with the live-action Aquaman movie that came out a few years later and made $1 billion, which makes sense considering both movies use the same source material. It just makes for a movie that doesn't have a huge impression for better or worse this time around. Blackening from 2022. Happy Juneteenth, by the way. A group of college friends getting fucked over in a cabin in the woods is a pretty long tradition, and it's great to have such a fun spin on it mixed with uniquely contextualized characters that are entirely competent in their own rights despite doing dumb shit along the way. From start to finish, Blackening is both familiar and new, with great performances throughout. The only thing horror fans in particularly might be disappointed in is the lack of actual victims, I suppose, but I was engaged throughout without a mandatory body on screen every few minutes. Doctor Who. The Chase. We practically get a whole episode of our protagonist just kind of relaxing before shit goes sour, leading into 5 straight episodes of running away from the Daleks through time and space. It is a really quick synopsis for a really simple plot that the story takes full advantage of by giving us constantly changing sets and situations to get out of in a way that feels less like the padding that we had in the previous stories. Unlike Susan's final adventure, both Ian and Barbara get a lot to do throughout, highlighting both of their purposes in the series' original conceptualization. The Doctor's tantrum at their departure does equally feel like a regression in character for him, though. It makes the first Doctor less of the authority he wants to be, and more of a petulant child who has to be convinced to help his friends and to keep the promises he made to his friends. I do feel like that original TARDIS crew of 4 never found the right balance, but I am really excited to see what happens with the new member we get in the final episode, Steven. And thanks to legal issues with the Beatles, you might be missing a scene in this serial depending on where you live, and out of all the reasons to be missing Doctor Who material, that has to be one of the most disappointing, because this is otherwise an exciting adventure that continues the trend of improved writing and storytelling. Godzilla raids again from 1955. Imagine if Anguirus' spike back was able to come off like it was originally planned. All of the weird fucking fights we would have gotten over the years. But this movie isn't about that. It's about a couple of pilots who keep stumbling into Godzilla-sized situations, a second Godzilla, since the original did die in that first movie in case you've forgotten, fights a giant spiky kaiju whose name nobody can agree on throughout Japan, causing enough issues that our protagonists opted to step in so we can have a human-driven finale. I do have a personal soft spot for this movie. It appears more so than other Godzilla fans. I find it feels more like a sequel to that original Godzilla movie in tone and style, more so than any other movies in the Showa era by far, while still making the movie less horrifically depressing. That being said, the final act does drag the pace of the production down immensely, cutting what could have been one triumphant sequence into 2 did not work in the movie's benefit. Neither did doing the whole thing with no musical accompaniment whatsoever. It makes the finale feel like we were just throwing ice cubes on a Godzilla toy. Southern Comfort from 1981. Our protagonists here are a National Guard squad that just up and gets lost in the middle of Louisiana and play the wrong joke on the wrong Cajuns who proceed to hunt our leads down to death. I feel like it would be unfair to compare this movie to Deliverance if the movie didn't make the reference itself, but that doesn't mean it's not worth your time. This is about what happens when a bunch of dude bros who think they know about wilderness realize how little they truly know in a survival situation. You get people playing Rambo and other people end up getting killed. It certainly has a lot of slow moments, more than not, but a really solid concept carries the movie more than I expected it would. Speak No Evil from 2022. Some horror movies are meant to be a little fun with a little cathartic thrills. This is not. This is malicious to the point where it is uncomfortable, and was based on the writer-director's own awful lodging experiences. What joy. A pretty chill, well-meaning family of protagonists makes the wrong set of friends who invite our protags to a little getaway at their home, where a series of increasingly more glaring red flags await them. This really is just a series of events designed to make the audience as uncomfortable as possible. Unflinchingly taking the worst possible outcome every step of the way, it makes for a slow but truly effective horror movie that isn't usually my cup of tea, but I recognize how well done it is. I can't wait to not watch the remake, because I just don't want to watch this story again. Jesus Christ. The 15th Doctor's first season. So we finally got a new Doctor, and he is explicitly fabulous. We were introduced to the 15th Doctor in the 60th anniversary special, but the first proper 15th Doctor story sets a pretty good tone for the rest of the season. The introduction of Ruby Sunday and the mystery that surrounds her is the big through line throughout the season. While the creatures we fight are a little more fantastical, they are not so far out of line with anything the series has done in the past, especially Classic Who. I very much adore Ncuti Gatwa's interpretation of the Doctor. He bounces, he pops, he brings a great energy to the series that is similar to 11's, but is distinctly 15. And I also love how 15 played off Ruby in the extended cast. Ncuti highlights everyone else as much as everyone else lets Ncuti shine. I don't love every episode. Space Babies was not my jam, even if I get it is meant to be a jumping on point for younger audiences to the show. And whether you think so or not, that is a very important thing for the series to do. And I do not think showrunner Russell T Davies did a particularly great job setting up his big climactic reveal. He left breadcrumbs obvious enough that everyone could find, but like the prize at the end was an arcade. Like really, really cool, and I like where we ended up. Just nobody could have pieced out where we were going with what we had. While in contrast, the highs of the series were episodes like Boom as well as Dot and Bubble, but I also like my Doctor Who with a lot of social commentary thrown in. I definitely also appreciated the big anti-reveal of the series' other big climactic mystery and the sentiment that came with that we end up deciding what makes things important in the world, not some arbitrary measure of importance. There are a lot of directions the 15 Doctors story could go. I like the mysteries that were seeded for next season, and I very much am looking forward to seeing what is going to come next and where this Doctor goes, and I hope the rest of the audience gives 15 time to evolve as well. I think every Doctor has only gotten better the more time they have in the role. Batman vs. Robin 2015. Good news is you do get a single serious Batman and Robin conflict. It's not just some titling gimmick. The fight just isn't so much of a highlight that it deserves to be the title of this movie. It should be a Court of Owls movie. Assuming you have seen Son of Batman, in this story we want to revisit some of those themes, hyper-focusing on Damian Wayne's past as he struggles with killing people. Except he doesn't actually struggle with killing people the entire movie. While a secret society of the city's 1% and their ninja army plot some evil plots in the background. Well, Jason O'Mara's Batman gets a huge energy boost this movie, and Stuart Allen's Robin is as spot on as ever. The writing around the characters doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Robin never actually shows real intent to kill, while Batman, the world's greatest detective, puts the blame of every other body he comes across on the Sun that he won't even acknowledge publicly. It feels like we're covering a lot of things that should have, and to an extent were brought up in Son of Batman. The Court of Owls, though, do make for an excellent villain, showing how well they could be utilized in a film setting. I never particularly loved the Batman movies of the DC AMU, but there is enough going on here around the clunky writing to make it my favorite of the lot. Hank Green, pissing out cancer. Now, Hank Green is a YouTube and internet treasure. It is amazing to see his career flourish to where it is today. It is pretty great he beat cancer, too. I don't really know how to review a comedy special, but to say I found his stories funny and vulgar, but not mean-spirited like so many stand-up routines end up being nowadays. Something I particularly appreciate. It really is about Hank's journey beating and subsequently pissing out cancer while giving all the delivery Hank Green and his beautiful nerdiness can, with a few pot shots thrown at Elon Musk, but he can afford it. Please check out Hank Green's special on Dropout if you are able to support, or just here on the YouTubes is an easy way to support. Doctor Who, the Time Meddler. Most of our first episode here is spent introducing our new companion, Stephen to the TARDIS, so much so that it would feel like a soft relaunch to reacquaint new audiences with the series' general format, if this wasn't the finale for the series' second season. But as soon as the Doctor gets Time Lord napped by the first appearance of another Time Lord in The Monk, we get a genuine plot and maybe the first instance of the pseudo-historical stories that the series would be known for in the future, as the new TARDIS crew works to stop this monk from meddling in time. This does make for a great introduction to rival Time Lords as a whole, in a way that I wish that the Monk or the War Master or another rogue Time Lord that isn't the Master would appear in the series as a regular or semi-regular antagonist in New Who. The Doctor bounces really well off of a character on the same intellectual footing here, while Vicky gets a whole lot to do leading Stephen through his first adventure in space and time. There is a lot to appreciate in the Time Meddler, but for everything it does right, it does lack a little bit of energy. With the exception of the Monk and his titular time meddling, this was a story that felt a little harder to pay attention to than the other stories in the Doctor Who's second season. As much as there is to love about this first Doctor story, there is a feeling of lacking, even if you divorce this from normal series finale expectations. Yeah, so thank you for sitting with me talking about what we watched last week. I hope everyone got to watch something special and fun last week in their own right, and I'd love to hear about whatever that is for you. Y'all are the best. Again, I don't foresee any delay in getting a video up next week. And again, if I mentioned any YouTube channels, they will absolutely be linked in the description. But I think I'm going to call it here and turn off the camera now. But before I go, just a reminder to, go and do something good today. Anything, do something good. Hey yo, things are going to get rolling on my count, so get ready to open those curtains in 3, 2, 1. Ba-da-ba-da. We are still recording, so we're great. We're gravy. Yeah?